Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm so sorry. I have had the worst couple of days of my entire life. So I am so sorry. I had the live chat. I do see you guys on. I'm going to have to fix Instagram. So bear with me as I do that. I'm so glad to see you guys. I had to move my live chat down from 6:40 to 7:40 because I had a client crisis in the office and had to facilitate helping my intern kind of navigate a crisis situation. So that really took my time. And then on top of that, guys, I left the office and then I totally forgot my camera. Okay, we wouldn't have had a live chat, so I had to go back to the office. So it's just been one of those days. And then on top of that, I'm just kind of self-disclosing here. And then on top of that, I had a close loss in my family the other day. And so there was a lot of trying to kind of process and be there for my family as much as I could. So there you guys have it. That's why Tamara is having a hard time tonight. But we're going to get into this, okay, guys, because I think this is going to be a good conversation for you. I'm going to try to keep this a little bit under an hour. Detached and emotionally unavailable and distant parents, they are so difficult to deal with. I'm going to type a message, though, really briefly. I'm going to say, hello, community. Join me over at my channel if you have comments. Okay, there we go. I think we're good to go. And I see you guys on. Thank you so much, girl mom. I really appreciate that. I'm going to get to the comment section here in a little bit. So that I can welcome you guys and we can talk a little bit further about this topic. Let me jump back into my thought, though. This is a very interesting conversation because I think a lot of people deal with emotionally detached and immature parents, and it's really hard to get them on the same level as you because they are constantly in this mental state of infancy. It's like they can't give you what they don't have, right? And I had a mentor years ago. He used to say that. He's like, they can't give you what they don't have. It's like trying to get orange juice from a dry orange. It's not going to happen. And so emotionally immature, detached, distant parents, there's something. So we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about some new terms. I'm going to drop some new terms for you so that you can kind of have some idea of kind of your experience. I feel like when I drop new terms, I'm giving you the language. So I think you're going to like that tonight. I'm going to talk about common behaviors of these kind of immature and detached mothers and fathers. I'm going to give you just a little bit of the research. I'm going to bring up a video that I posted. It was a very short video. I got so many complaints, okay? And I didn't get complaints on the simple fact that it's a topic of loneliness. It was too short. Everybody was like, couldn't you have given us a little bit more? Like, this was teasing us. So I am going to incorporate a little bit of that conversation, which is the psychology of loneliness. Because when you have an emotionally detached or emotionally immature mother and father, you're going to deal with a lot of pieces of loneliness. You cannot connect with or become interwoven with, if you will, somebody who is just not there. So there's two different ways that psychology looks at these individuals. That this parent either can't give you what they should, or they won't. And so those are two broad concepts. I'm going to try to break those down for you as well. And of course, more towards the end of the live chat, we're going to talk about how this impacts you. So let's jump in. Okay, guys. Emotionally detached, unavailable, and immature parents, and you are the adult child, I'm sure in some ways, and tell me how you guys feel, and this is what research says you most likely feel, that in some ways the parent is physically present, but emotionally and psychologically distant. They're physically present, but emotionally and psychologically distant. Because of that, there's often what we call a role reversal. And that is basically when the parent kind of is the parent for the many months that they carry you. They are the father when they need to be the father, But when you come into the world, or you absolutely need a mature, wise, guiding parent to help you, they are absolutely non existent. Now, some research suggests that there's a concept. Tell me what you think of this, guys. There's a concept known as unintentional abuse, unintentional abuse, unintentional emotional neglect, unintentional emotional neglect. And basically, what this means is the parent has abused you, the parent has emotionally neglected you. But have they done it on purpose in all cases? Is there a possibility that their lack of maturity, their lack of presence psychologically and emotionally in your world was not so much because they didn't love you, was not so much because they didn't want you or couldn't manage you? It was more so their inability and their incapacity to be what it is that you need and to be the parent. So the concept of unintentional abuse and unintentional emotional neglect, those are very, oh, what's the word, guys? Those are very tricky terms because nobody wants to believe, and I'm going to break this down so we can kind of look at it from different angles, but nobody wants to believe that a parent who has caused so much pain, so much agony, so much fear, fear of abandonment in other relationships, right? And I'm going to tell you more of what's most likely your experience, but this is just a few things I'm highlighting. You know, you may also find that you're very codependent. A parent who has kind of, you know, entrapped you, you know, in your world and in your development. You can't move from, you know, child to adult in a smooth way without too many bumps in the road because of their negligence, because of their abuse of you, because of their lack of emotional connection to you. The concept says it doesn't have to be intentional that they have done this to you. It could be they didn't have the capacity to be what you needed them to be. I recently had a case like that. I actually referred this case because, you know, the family was just so much in need of an agency approach. You know, I'm a private practice. I've worked everywhere in my life, okay, for the past 15 years of my career providing therapy. But now I'm in private practice. I've been for the past 6 or 7 years. And, you know, private practice is so different from agency work. In private practice, there's me, maybe some students that I'm in, you know, teaching or I'm supervising. Maybe there's another therapist I've kind of signed on to work with me and see a couple of patients. And I'm doing most of the caring, though, of the cases. So that's a private practice environment. An agency environment is you're going to go to a building that has a lot of different families. You're going to sign in at the front desk. You're going to sit in the waiting room and you're going to wait. You know, you're going to be on kind of like a roster. And you're going to notice a variety of professionals in one building, you know, not just a therapist. So there's a difference there. So the case that I had, I referred from my private practice to an agency where they can not only have family therapy, marital therapy, but also child and adolescent therapy on top of EMDR and other forms of treatment, because the mother was very, very unstable, emotionally and psychologically unstable. She wasn't the kind of individual that had just a mental illness, like, or a mental health condition like bipolar disorder or OCD. She had a combination of personality disorder and a mental illness. So we're talking about bipolar disorder plus borderline personality disorder. And I know you can imagine how up and down that was for her children. So the family was referred for that particular reason alone. My point here is to say that did the parent want to harm her children and create a very unstable lifestyle for her children? No, I really and honestly believe that her intention was to have children, have her husband, have a white picket fence life, right? be happy, be fully engaged, raise her perfect children, and be happy and ride off into the sunset. Life didn't turn out that way. It was mental health challenges started popping up every time, she would face some kind of family challenge. Maybe my kid is failing school. Maybe I got into a car accident. Maybe my husband's having an affair. Those things brought out the ugly pieces of who she is, and that wasn't a good thing, because now she's providing an environment to her children that is constantly unstable, abusive, neglectful, traumatizing. And then her husband, who's trying to carry everything, is literally breaking down. So is this unintentional abuse? Is this an emotionally detached and immature parent? I would say emotionally immature. I would also say unintentional abuse. Can she intentionally go to a therapist and get treatment, see a psychiatrist and get medication? 100%. But does that mean that she's intentionally abusing her children? No, right? So this gets pretty tricky. I did a video a couple years ago on unintentional abuse. So I'm going to put that in the description box when I'm done with this live chat tonight, so that you can see that, because I think it's important to know. Now, aside from unintentional abuse is the idea of projective identification. Projective identification. I'm going to say this is a little bit of a Freudian psychodynamic kind of a concept, because the idea is this: it's the unconsciously immature and emotionally detached parent takes their shortcomings and projects them onto you. And over time, you can begin to kind of internalize that emotionally destabilized parent's projection and take on some of those characteristics. So an example of this could be, let's say your father is a psychopath. Okay, he's always been cold, callous, emotionally detached. He fusses and whines over just about everything. He's very, very infantile. He's immature. He's done nothing but create pain and sorrow in your whole life. Okay, here you are, an adult. You go to your mom because they're still married. You share that your marriage is ending. You need some information from your mom and your dad. How do I navigate this? How do I, the typical things that we adult children sometimes need our parents for. Let's say your dad says, you know what? I've always seen you as a loser. I've always seen you as a loser, and I never told you that because your mom wanted me to protect you. But you're just a loser. I knew when you married her, that you weren't going to make it. You put your mind to much of nothing. You're lazy about everything. The reality of that interaction, and I know you guys can most likely relate to that. I've seen this in therapy sessions, and it takes a lot out of me now to just kind of sit there with what is said without, emotionally showing that I am so disgusted by that. You know what I mean? But I know you can relate to this. And so this kind of a father is saying things to you that, you may just kind of sit there like, really, this is what you thought of me, and what's happening there with projective identification is this, that he's taking what he's always felt about himself. He's taken all of his shortcomings that he has internalized, that he has digested, maybe that he's heard, maybe from his own parents. And he's saying, you know what? You take this burden. You're this. I'm not. You are. And if you sit there and internalize it, guess what happens? Over time, it plays on your mind, and you go through a process of what is called rumination, or it becomes kind of like this obsessive thought. And your mind just kind of spins and cycles over what he has said to you. And if you're not careful and able to process this properly, then you can actually begin to live out what it is that your dad has said that you're all about. And we call that a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that concept is pretty understandable. Self-fulfilling prophecy. You kind of live it out, There's a lack of capacity to exist in a healthy way when it comes to these kind of emotionally detached and immature parents. There's a lack of capacity. I really want you to kind of underscore that, underline that in your mind, digest that so that you don't self-blame. Because I think there's a lot of people, and I've treated them for almost my entire career, for adult children and young children and adolescents of these kind of parents, you can over time kind of internalize this wrong storyline, or this damaging narrative. And the damaging narrative is something's wrong with me. I mentally and psychologically and intellectually and emotionally can't measure up. And so that damaging narrative gets digested. But the reality of that for most people I've seen in my career is this, that the parent has a lack of capacity to engage in a way that is healthy. And so it impacts you over time. They also have a lack of capacity to exist in a healthy dyad with the child. What this means, and the adult child, I don't want you to think I'm just talking about children, but even the adult child, a dyad is basically a relationship of two people. And so an emotionally detached and immature parent doesn't have the capacity to exist within that two-person dynamic. And so what happens? You kind of get pushed to the side, you get minimized, you get invalidated, and either the parent that's immature and detached steps back out of your life and lets grandma and grandpa take care of you, lets the community take care of you, lets the teachers take care of you, lets you get a job really early, start having early sexual experiences, start doing drugs, right? Start neglecting your physical health, your emotional and psychological health. There's a lot of things that these parents are often to blame for, and our young society just kind of fails. They fall through the cracks because these kind of parents are challenging. They don't know how to exist in a healthy dyad with the child, a healthy relationship with the individual. One last thing before I go to the chat box, because I see you guys chatting, I do want to engage you. Let me say lastly before I go to the chat box that you may also over time, as you're developing into an adult, you may find that they leave a very deep, seared, like you sear a steak. They have you may experience a very deep seated or seared imprint of trauma that kind of is placed upon your idea of relationships. That's what I'm trying to get to. So you can experience this deep imprint of trauma that kind of gets imprinted on your idea of what a relationship is. Why should you believe, after experiencing this emotionally detached and immature parent, you've experienced a very unhealthy, emotionally detached relationship starting out in childhood, maybe worsening in adolescence, and maybe in some of your adulthood, if not all? Why would you trust that any other relationship in your life is going to be any better if the most important relationship didn't succeed? And according to research in psychology on parent-child relationships, the parent relationship is the most significant relationship in a child's life. From that moment that the baby is conceived, from the moment that baby is born, right? And I always tell you guys about this when I'm talking about this topic. The infant is placed on mom's skin, is placed on dad. Why? Because there's a psychological, there's a neurobiological and chemical reaction that happens with skin to skin contact. And that is an important piece of attachment. If that process happens, fantastic. That's wonderful. That's a start. But now once baby comes home with mom and dad, what has to happen? Well, there has to be safety. There has to be security. There has to be basic needs met. There has to be stimulation in all kinds of ways. Why? Because that is then going to start the process of healthy attachment. And so if none of that happens and you end up being abused, whether it's intentional or unintentional, the healthy attachment that you're supposed to get doesn't happen. There's going to be a long-term collapse in the relationship between parent and child. And so if that didn't work, right, and it was a failure, why would you, over time, believe that any other relationship is going to be different? So it leaves an imprint of trauma on your brain. Okay, let me go to the chat box, guys. Let me get a sip of water. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and jump in. Okay. Whew. Let's start, guys. I feel like I'm so behind tonight. Kay Razy, hello. Yes, thank you for lemons. I was looking up the research the other day. Thank you for saying that. Kay Razy, welcome. Glad to see you. Always glad to see you. You always come across as so positive. So glad to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Lemon Squeeze. I love that name. It's so cute. Welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Tammy Nicely. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. I see you guys chatting up. You guys were keeping each other company while I was trying to handle a crisis. Fairy Girl. Hello and welcome. So glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Always love your comments. Dawn One. Hello. Welcome. Yes, I was a little bit late tonight. I apologize. Thank you for keeping track of the time. My friend Shamita, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome. I'm sorry. I see you're saying that I'm usually around at this time. This is the life of a clinician. You know what I mean, guys? Of a psychotherapist. It's like, I plan to see 0 clients on Friday, which means I'm probably really going to see about 4 or 5. And then on top of that, there's probably going to be a crisis that's going to take over the entire day. So you got a chance to see it up close and personal. Bree, it's been such a long time. So glad to see you back. Welcome. Okay, let me keep moving, guys. I am looking for comments. Elizabeth, thank you so much for that. So sweet. I am okay. A client was not. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you. Jessica J, thank you so much. Yes, I see your comments as well. Thank you for that. Oh, Jessica J, thank you. It's been such a rough 2 days. Or 3, I should say. Thank you. I really appreciate that. James McDonald, hello, welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Hopefully you signed back in. I'm going to go through and just welcome you guys, and then I'm going to jump back into the content here because we've missed a little bit of time. Give it a think. Hello. Yes, hasn't it? It has been a week, but good to see you. Welcome. Brian D, I see you. Hello. Welcome. I am so glad that you were excited about tonight's live chat. Hopefully you were able to go ahead and sign on. Cheyenne Morgan, Michelle Lynn, Girl Mom, and Mark Taylor. Hello to all of you. Welcome. Good to see you as well. Okay. Lorfit, Tara, Juby Joe. Good to see you guys. Welcome, welcome. I'm looking for comments. James McDonald says, there is nothing worse than being more emotionally mature than your own parents. It's like the roles have reversed where you have to grow up even quicker. Yes. And, let me just say, part of the case that I told you guys about earlier at the beginning of the live chat, part of the issue with that case was that the crises in the family created a lot of uproar, and the children had to actually step up and be way more mature than the parent. And so what that did was a lot of damage. It wasn't just a role reversal. It wasn't just the process of projective identification. They weren't just being blamed for things. It was this internalized experience of emotional neglect. And, that really causes kids, really resilient, smart kids, to fight back. And sometimes that fighting back means you grow up way too soon. You kind of don't have time for childish things because you've got to worry about your survival. You can experience a lot of symptoms of complex PTSD. So nightmares and night terrors, depression and anxiety, fear of attaching to people, right? Not having this bond with people, this attachment, right? You're too afraid. And there's often this, this internal, don't trust anyone kind of sense of self. And, it's like me, myself, and I don't trust anyone, even those who are there to help me. And so, it is a very, very bad experience for children who are in these kind of cases. Let me just say, before I came to be a therapist in private practice and agencies and schools and so forth, I was working in an agency where I would actually go to the crisis. So the crisis team would go to the family and kind of calm the storm. And then I would be the therapist that would jump in later and visit the family and kind of get a sense of what's going on at home, get a sense for, is this a dangerous situation? Does this family need resources? What's going on here? And in this kind of, it was some kind of like community instant intervention program. What I saw a lot of was emotionally and psychologically unwell parents, and most of them were mothers. The fathers were gambling, having affairs, running the streets, or doing drugs, while the parents, the mother, would just be going through psychosis and, having a meltdown because of feeling unsafe, borderline personality symptoms, just kind of being out of control, lack of medication use, overuse of marijuana and other drugs, which can shift behavior and personality. Whether it's a drug or whether it's legalized, it can still shift your way of thinking and seeing the world. And so the mothers in these cases, and also the fathers, made it very easy, James McDonald, to your point, made it very, very easy for kids to have to engage in being adults way, way too soon. So it is very much a role reversal. Sun and Sunflowers, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Laura Fitz says, emotionally detached parents affect your self-esteem, and they also make you feel unloved. Yes, they do. We're going to get into this in just a second here. Give it a think. I agree, Laura Fit, by the way. Give it a think says, I tried all the things to bond with those quasi-humans and nothing worked. Giving up at least brought relief from my pattern of trying to get blood from a turnip. Yeah. Or whatever the metaphor is. Yes. In a sense, would you consider that, I want to make sure I give it the right word. Would you say in some ways, give it a think, maybe was there an acting out period for you? Because I feel like most of the cases that I have now, and most of the cases I've had over my career, have been if kids feel like they are not loved, that you are detached from them, that you are a very emotionally immature parent. And I'm going to break that down in just a minute. These kind of parents, I've seen kids act out. They either become very angry and resentful, defiant and disengaged. They become obsessive compulsive sometimes, right? They've got to keep their hands clean. They've got to make sure that things are organized. They have to stay on time. Everything has to be scheduled. I don't like when that drawer is open over there. It has to be closed. That fork is touching my banana and I don't like it. And the peas on my plate are now touching my steak and I don't like that either. So some of those behaviors, I wouldn't consider those necessarily acting out, but in a sense, it's almost like the child is crying for help. It's like, somebody help me gain control. Somebody hear me. And so now my subconscious is causing me to have all these issues, trauma symptoms, OCD symptoms, obsessive compulsive symptoms, right? I'm also being very rebellious to the point of becoming a juvenile delinquent. Now I've been arrested. Now I've been put in a detention center, right? Now I'm failing in school. This is just how it goes. Now you may be wondering, well, what about the adults? Is there a period of acting out with them? And research in psychology says yes. Here's what happens with adult children, though. They don't act out in all those ways that I just named sometimes. They often act out in the sense that they either choose partial or complete family estrangement. I've seen that a lot. They totally, which I've done a live chat on this, I'll post it in the description box for you guys later. They totally engage in going no contact, and they may ghost their parents. Sometimes that happens. Another way that adult children kind of act out is they grab onto somebody, pull them into a relationship with them, and then they move, right? Move so many miles across the nation. They move to a different country sometimes. Or they fill their lives up with that person in their relationship so much that there's no time for parent-child engagement. So that's kind of like the adult form of acting out against that emotionally detached and immature parent. Yeah. So I don't know. You tell me, give it a think. What has been your experience there? A seat at the King's Table with Tanisha. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. James McDonald, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm always grateful when you guys do that. James McDonald says, I needed this live so much. Thank you, Tamara. You're welcome. Tomorrow, I'm going to be a little, more settled, and we're going to get into the meat of some things. I feel a little rushed after that crisis, Tammy nicely says, you're talking about my mom, Tammy. Yeah. I know. I had a feeling. Fairy Girl, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate you always. Thank you. Judith Barrett says, so sorry for your loss. Thank you very much. Thank you. I might share. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how I'm feeling about it because it's so fresh, you know. Mr. Frederick, hello and welcome. Good to see you. He says, I have always felt like the parent of an orphan. Ooh, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. There's a process. I'm going to read a couple more comments and then we're going to get back into the content because you guys are dying for that. I know. There's a process known as individuation. Have you guys heard of that? We're going to talk about it in just a minute. A process of individuation basically involves this. It involves really being this child that has to abide by a parent's view of things. They also have to abide by a parent's rules and regulations. Then they become a preteen and they have to continue to abide by rules. They hit 16 and all the ages above, and they begin to automatically go through this process of individuation. Sometimes we call it self-individuation. You'll hear about that in a minute. But individuation is, I am now becoming separated. This is my family. I'm becoming separated a little over time from my family so that I can then build my own concepts, build my own value system, build my own barriers, boundaries, interests, meet my personal desires and needs. I am learning how to find a job and feel confident in working it. I am now able to go off to college and feel like a young adult and care for myself. I am now at 25 years of age able to find somebody and then give them unconditional love for me, right? So it's almost like this process of individuation that you go through. And sadly, for those who have emotionally immature parents and detached parents, that process of individuation may not have ever taken root. Neither, may it have ever happened. Why? Because you kind of had to skip over individuation and become the adult. Or your needs and all of your emotions and thoughts were kind of squashed by that immature and emotionally detached parents' needs. So it gets very complicated. Can you kind of hear that, guys? This is a chat we could have for many, many days. Degenerates, is that what it is? Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat and the channel. I don't remember seeing you. Degenerate says, I'm a now self-aware, unintentional abuser. Whew, yeah. We're going to talk about that. My previously undiagnosed ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, or is it antisocial disorder? I don't know which one. It could be both. Has caused me many relationship problems, attracted me to other neurodiverse partners who left me as alone, left you alone as a parent. I'm going to say that. I think that's what you're saying. Degenerates, let me break something down briefly. I'm going to read one more comment and we're going to go back to the content. Someone's really blowing me up here. There's a lot of distractions tonight. I'm literally going to move my phone. Okay. It doesn't exist. Let me break something down to you, degenerates, just for a second here. ADHD, and you may have seen this if you've been on my channel for a while. ADHD is often, if it's not treated, it's like a precursor to other problems in life. You know how we call, certain drugs the gateway drug? Well, ADHD is sometimes the gateway disorder for a variety of other issues. So let's say, for example, you were diagnosed at 10 years old with ADHD. You can also be diagnosed as an adult, but I'm using this because it's the clearest example. You were diagnosed with ADHD at age 10. Okay. You had combined type, meaning that you had ADHD, impulsivity, hyperactivity, but you also had an inability to pay attention for long periods of time. So that's combined type. You have both of those things going on. If that did not get properly treated through therapy, an educational plan at school, parents being well-rounded about how to treat you and how to help you, a therapist, the list goes on. If that wasn't treated appropriately, ADHD can over time blossom into learning disabilities, It can also blossom into oppositional defiant disorder. If that's not taken care of, it can go into what we call conduct disorder or juvenile delinquency. That's another way to kind of look at that. And if that doesn't get treated, then it can go into antisocial personality disorder. That's a very brief explanation. ADHD, for a lot of people, especially when it's not treated, is kind of like this gateway door to other issues in life. So, mentioning ADHD is important, because if it was undiagnosed and you were dealing with it all those years or for however long, it can really impact your functionality down the line. And it can also impact you if you have an emotionally distant, detached, unavailable, immature parent. It can make things 10 times worse. One more comment, guys. A Seat at the King's Table with Tanisha says, what a fascinating topic, especially in families where there's a generational cycle of the parent giving birth at a young age, even though I know age does not necessarily always equal maturity. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. We're going to get into intergenerational trauma here pretty soon. And I think you guys are going to want to see it. Okay. What's happening here? What is wrong with these parents? I know you want to know. I am literally scratching the surface here, because I will do a follow-up video that I probably will post next week sometime, so you guys can kind of see different angles of this topic. But one of the things that psychology has identified, I have also identified with these kind of parents, is there's often no capacity to divide their attention and or their affection between their needs and your needs. Let me go back over that. So there's no capacity for them to divide their time, their affection, their attention between their needs and your needs. So when there's an imbalance there, you're not going to get an adult parent. You're not going to get this adult, I'm trying to say, as a parent, to give you what it is that you emotionally and psychologically need. Why? Because all of their energy is over here treating all their own needs. They're doing drugs, they're being in, multiple relationships with people, they're dating around, they're partying, they're going out for a night on the town, they're taking pictures, they think they're cute or handsome, and they're out there flaunting, they're shallow, arrogant, the list goes on. Okay. These kind of parents usually are like adolescents with absolutely no ability to recognize that this is not okay behavior. These kind of parents may also engage in, pranking people, lying to people, deceiving, deceiving. They may even engage in things like fraudulent activity. Or fraudulent behaviors. I even had a client one time, they actually helped rob a bank in my local area. And I saw the news and I'm like, oh my God, no, this is not happening right now. And she was the mother and he was the father of one of my clients. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So you may get that as well. So they're over here putting all their energy into their own needs, right? And sometimes the needs of other people, which would probably be a romantic partner. And here you are over here saying, what about me? I am lonely. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm uncertain. I'm lost. I don't have an identity. Life confuses me. I'm afraid. Should I deal with this person? Should I not? I'm failing school. I'm not doing good at work, right? You're dealing with all of this over here, and your mom and your dad is over here living it up somewhere. And so there's no capacity. This is my point. There's no capacity to divide their attention, love, and affection between themselves and you. So they often push you out of the equation because you're kind of like an inconvenience to these kind of parents, right? There's often a lot of passivity with these parents or hostility. They kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? They kind of sway between the two poles, right? Passivity and hostility. Sometimes they don't speak up for you. Sometimes they don't speak on the things that they should. They may never call your school growing up when you needed it. They may never give you insight as a grown-up as you need it. They may never give you wisdom or guidance, passivity. Or maybe as a child, they never really parented you. You were kind of on your own. We call that permissive parenting. It's the latchkey kid. The kid who gets into mom and dad's liquor cabinet because mom's always working and dad's always out gambling. Maybe you were the kind of child that saw yourself off to school and let yourself back in the house at the end of the day. So these kind of issues can be considered very permissive parenting, very passive. On the flip side of that, you may have a very hostile parent. You can't talk to them. Even as an adult, you can't talk to them. You can't get through to them. You can't come to a respectable, agreement on anything. You can't disagree in a healthy way and come back and still love each other. Because the parent who's detached and immature and unavailable tends to be hostile. Psychology also highlights that these kind of parents often do not experience individuation. They don't experience that. Remember earlier, I said the process of individuation is to be connected to the family and mold with that family, and then over time pull away so that you can develop yourself. Well, sometimes emotionally immature and detached parents don't do that. They don't have the capacity to engage in that process of learning and growing and failing and creating their own identity. Why? Because something happened in their own development, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's early substance abuse. Sometimes it's teenage pregnancy. Sometimes it's being abused and neglected, having a very, very difficult time with PTSD growing up, right? Being sexually abused. All of those things can really get in the way of the process of individuation, and that could be your parents, There's also competition and jealousy with these kind of parents. Nobody wants to believe their parents are jealous. Nobody wants to believe that, their parent has something out against them, that there's a vendetta, that there's some kind of animosity between, the two of you. But the reality is that parental jealousy and envy does exist. I have a ton of videos on the channel about it. And if you look in the description box of those videos, you will get the research, the articles, and so forth. Let me also say, too, that these kind of parents, I'm going to give you a little of the research and then go back to the chat box. And then we're going to finish the third part of this, and then we're going to wrap up. But let me also say that these kind of parents, they tend to really, I'm trying to find the right words because I don't want to give you the wrong impression. They try to, I'll put it this way, they try to function. Or maybe I won't say try. I'm going to take try out of there. I'm going to say they function based on ego and based on pleasure. These kind of parents, because I don't think they try. I think that's really just who they are. They function on ego and they function on pleasure. Have you had a parent like that? They are driven by their ego, right? And they can kind of come across as very narcissistic. They're not humble. They're not reflective. They're not engaging. They haven't engaged with you. They don't care to engage with you. They cannot be anything that you need them to be, whether that's when you were a child, an adolescent, or even now in your life. They can't give you anything, right? Why? Because again, it's like, what did they say? Trying to get lemon juice from lemons. Is that the saying? Somebody help me with that saying. But it's like trying to get this parent to give you something that they just don't have because they function in their ego all the time. Everything is about how smart they are, how good they are, how intellectual they are, what they can get, their social control and stamina, how people see them. They're constantly functioning within their ego. And I hate to say it, and pleasure as well. These kind of parents love to party, get high, disregard their responsibilities. These are the kind of parents who they're never around when you need them for anything. They're just absent and they don't care and they don't seem to feel guilty about it. Okay, let me share a little bit of research with you guys because you most likely have questions about this. How does this impact your brain? There are neurobiological studies that really highlights that these kind of parents can put you through so much emotionally and psychologically that your brain kind of shuts down. Your brain kind of becomes defensive towards any relationships that are external. Your brain kind of says, no, I perceive threat there, even when there isn't. Your fight or flight system either never turns off or it gets triggered very easily. You constantly feel on edge. You may not be able to sleep. You may not be able to develop healthy emotional bonds and attachments. These are all neurobiological components. The amygdala, that small almond piece of the brain that sits in the middle of the brain, it's surrounded by what we call the limbic system. And that limbic system is our emotional center. And that's the part of the brain that quote unquote lights up when there's fear, pleasure, happiness, all kind of emotions, right? Now, there's another part of the brain that this kind of parent can impact, and that is the hippocampus. The hippocampus kind of gives context to all of your emotional memories. The amygdala says, oh, that's nice. Let's go ahead and store that memory in the middle of the brain. We're going to store this, Or let's say your mom is threatening to kill herself and she's screaming and crying and you're trying to calm her down and she's not listening. She goes from 0 to 100 and back down to 0 like nothing ever happened. You're so confused by this parent. You don't understand why they are this way, why they don't just get help, right? Why they continue to just kind of spin their family around and around like a tornado. All of those emotions get imprinted on the brain. And they also get imprinted in the amygdala. The amygdala stores them as emotional memories. And so you may actually have a flashback of an experience with mom and dad because of something in your environment. Maybe you smelled something, saw something, maybe a color triggered you, a word, a thought, a t-shirt, right? That's the amygdala saying, I have those memories. It's right here. It's all in me. The hippocampus goes behind the amygdala and says, you know what? Let me put some context to that night mom flipped out and threatened to kill herself. You were wearing this shirt. You were crying. You remember how cold it was. There was ice on your feet as you were chasing after your mom. Dad came home. Mom yelled at dad, right? The hippocampus really gives that context. The neurobiological piece here is this, and I'm making this very simplified because there's many parts of the brain that gets triggered, but these are very two important systems I try to get people to understand, because if you are dealing with these kind of parents on a regular basis, the amygdala, the hippocampus, your executive functioning, which is what we call the prefrontal cortex, all of those areas of the brain get impacted. And you're not just going to have flashbacks, nightmares. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that you can have. Roller coaster moods, fear, heightened fight or flight system, an inability to pay attention, stay focused. All of that is compromised by all of the life experiences that you have had with this kind of parent. It just shuts you down, Can you fight back and get better? Yes, but you often need help and time to do that. Okay, let me go back to the chat box, guys. I am so behind. Oh my God, where are we? Juby Joe, thank you. I've been in private practice now for 7 years. And I'm like, is retirement coming up? No, it's not. No, I have another 25, 30 years before retirement comes. I love all of my clients, I do. I love the children. They're always hugging me or telling me something, or we're sharing things, or it's such a blessed position to be in with kids and adolescents. But let me tell you, sometimes rough and traumatizing. Thank you, GB Joe. M. Odell says, very sad situation for the whole family. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm jumping in late on that. But if you're talking about my client, M. Odell, yes. Bree says, I have a fear of abandonment, and my therapist believes my mom played a role in making it worse when she would say, my grandparents left because they didn't love me. Right. Absolutely. Most definitely. No child wants to hear that, especially from something as sacred as grandma and grandpap, That is possible. It is also possible too. I'm going to throw this in here. Maybe you can share this with your therapist because it could be something to explore. It could also be that, her saying that made it worse, but maybe you sensed that she really meant that, and so feeling like this parent over you means something is traumatizing, right? If you didn't believe it, it probably wouldn't be traumatizing. So that might be something else to look at. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. Sometimes, I always say this and I hope it doesn't get taken incorrectly, but I just feel like there's some people that just should never have had children. You are not ready. You're just not ready. You're not mature enough. You're going to hurt your kids. You're going to create a disastrous situation for society, maybe. And something as terrible as losing your children can happen. And then they're going to get thrown into the adoption and foster system where there's tons more trauma. So, some people I don't think that they should be able to have children. I hate to say it. I do. It hurts to say it because I don't want anybody to feel like really. But the reality, though, is not every mother is a parent and not every father. And so, I think some people can barely take care of pets. And I had someone consult with me many years ago about that, abusing their pets. They were the cutest dogs. And she had about 5 or 6 of them, she and her boyfriend. This was somebody that consulted with me years ago. And they were the most beautiful dogs. Oh my God, I love them. But I started seeing, hair that was matted on the dogs. I was starting to see signs of abuse. One time, she brought one of her dogs to my office as she was getting a consultation that day. And I looked at the dog and he's afraid. She went to grab her purse and he kind of, scurried under the couch. He was afraid. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? After 2 or 3 weeks from that consultation, the police contacted me and I'm thinking, oh God, it's probably CPS or something like that, Child Protective Services. And it was not, it was actually animal cruelty because she had left her dogs out in what do they call it? Zero temperatures, below zero temperatures is what I was trying to say. And oh boy, the situation just turned to be a very ugly situation because of course the dogs were taken off of her, but then she tried to replace the dogs with conceiving, and thankfully she was not able to be successful in that. But some people cannot care for their pets properly, much less having children. So it's a very, very sad reality. Orlando, I don't know if I said hello to you. I think I did. Welcome if I did not. Orlando says, my mama hid her pregnancy of me. She was 15 when she had me, and my daddy was 16 kids. Is that what you mean? Do you mean he had 16 kids? Yeah, that's rough. I often, and you guys can share with me what you think of this, I often feel like parents who have also tons and tons of kids like that, and especially if there are different partners, there's something going on there too, and either it's a fear of being alone, a fear of loneliness. Is it a lack of responsibility? Is it difficulty understanding the reality of the responsibility? I don't know, but there's something going on there too. I really do believe some people just continue to conceive, and sometimes with multiple partners, and that's a sign that something is terribly wrong here. And I see that mainly in inner city urban areas where I used to provide counseling. I saw that in agencies where there were a variety of kids, different partners, and there was something going on with the parent, Fairy girl, I see you. You said OCD, you know me. Yep. You have shared it with us. SH, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. SH says, yes, lots of projection and sabotage. Ruined my mom who had issues already. Yep. Remember, projective identification, it's projecting what's really wrong with the person onto somebody else. And your mom, your parent could have definitely had the experience of kind of internalizing what she was told about herself, Kay Racy says, it's horrible when you realize that you've absorbed some of your toxic parent traits. So important to always be mindful and figure out, if they're really coming for you or if they're introverts or introjects. I'm sorry, not introverts, introjects. Oh, that's a good comment. I agree. Kim Math E. Told you I wasn't going to forget it. Kim Matthew. I got it. After about 12 live chats, I got it. Kim Matthew says, good evening. Hope everyone's New Year's going well. Carried Shane. Is abuse, it causes rumination and low self-esteem. We can heal. It takes work and time. I think you meant if abuse causes rumination and low self-esteem, we can heal. It takes work and it takes time. I'm going to read it that way. Bree says, I was a teen and had acne, which was normal. I missed that. Because here's your comment. Let me complete this so people will understand. Bree says, self-fulfilling prophecy of being a nobody, because my mom would get mad and yell at me to be somebody, yet would also call me a slob, while my grandmother would say nobody would ever love someone with bad skin. Got you. Mm-hmm. I was a teen and had acne, which was normal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can we call that projective identification? I think we can. Nancy R, hello. Yes, you're welcome. Nancy R is like, thank you for my therapy. You're welcome. I'm so glad this is helpful. You're going to love tomorrow. Tomorrow, guys, before I read the next few comments and get back into the content, tomorrow is reparenting yourself. So you've had emotionally detached, unavailable, immature parents. How do you now take what you have on your platter and then turn it into something that can continue you and your life down the road into a healthy way? How do you do this? We're going to talk about that tomorrow. And I don't know if I said this, but you're welcome, Nancy R. I'm so glad this is helpful. Minimally Leah, hello. I'm so glad to see you. I haven't seen you in so long. I know you're following me on Instagram, my slowly developing Instagram. I got to do better. So good to see you. And I'm sure you can relate to this topic based on what you've shared with us. Kim Matthew says, thank God for healing. Yes, I totally agree. Right? Because if we were stuck, right? And I'm saying we as in humans, if we stay stuck in all the things that just has hurt us, right? Life would be really bad. We wouldn't have all the skills we have and the insights and the compassion and the love and the care for others, and the list goes on. Nancy R says, love that seared description. Yeah. You guys have seen like seared steaks. Yeah. Parents can do that to you. Tara O, hello and welcome. I don't know if I welcomed you. Good to see you. Laura Fitz says, listening to this great topic and loving your earrings at the same time. Thank you so very much. They're bohemian tonight. Honestly, I don't remember where I get them. I usually get them from Shein, but I stopped shopping at Shein for some purposes I'm not going to say on my channel. Brooklyn Capo 1. You should be okay with that, but can we curtail some of that just a little bit so YouTube doesn't censor you? And yes, I had a feeling I would be spot on. I feel like I've seen you before and you've kind of shared your story with us. You say my girl was toxic, just like my mother. Yeah. Sometimes you have a parent that's detached, emotionally unavailable, and immature. And then you end up in a relationship with that same dynamic exists, right? You're like, how did I let that happen? What did I not learn from this kind of a parent? Yeah. Jessica J says, my mother-in-law is still a child at the age of 85. It's tragic. Yeah. When a parent, mother-in-law, whatever you want to refer to them as, Jessica J, if once they hit 85 and they are still a child, we call that a personality disorder because it's a pervasive, chronic, long-term pattern of behavior. Life hasn't shifted it. Age hasn't shifted it. Neither has any kind of morals or values or belief systems. So if something is that fixed and you're 85, and you're still acting this way, it's a personality disorder. Excuse me, guys. It's a personality disorder. That's the way I summarize that to many of my clients. Fairy girl, thank you so much. Thank you. You know when the women are excited, right? About fashion. We love fashion. It's a female thing. Sorry, guys. It's a female thing. Fruity Pie ASMR. I always get that messed up. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you back in a live chat. Says, unfortunately, I still live with my mother right now, but I took 2 days off and got a chance to do laundry. The next morning, my mom left her job just to come home to monitor me, shaking my head. I don't get it. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had more to that. I could give you more to go off of, but I will say that it's just painful, right? When you realize that your relationship with somebody that should be healthy isn't. Brooklyn, CA, I'm going to say Brooklyn Capo 1. Brooklyn Capo 1. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right, let's go into how does this impact you? Well, psychology says, and I have seen this as well, it's sometimes like you have developed this comfort zone. And you tell me if you feel like it's a comfort zone, but it's like you have developed this comfort zone of operating as a split self. Let me go back over that. It's like some people who have been raised under and have dealt with emotionally detached, immature, and unavailable parents, they often develop over time, not dissociative identity disorder, sometimes depending on how much abuse occurs, but I'm not referring to dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, but it's almost as if it's a protective mechanism. I had a kid once say this to me in therapy. When I'm around my mom, who tends to be very abusive, I'm tough, I'm fearless, I'm angry, I'm hostile, I am no nonsense. But, and this was an 11-year-old, he says, but when I come to therapy or when I'm at school, I'm happy, I'm free, I trust, I'm loving, and I'm engaged. And I never forgot it. And I remember he and I went on to do years of therapy. He's now 25 and he still, calls me, Miss Tamara, can I come and see you? I'm having problems with my girlfriend, So he grew up to be a very, very decent, loving, sweet young man. But the issue is this, though, for him as a child, he dealt with this split existence, and it's like having an immature parent, an emotionally detached parent says, I'm not going to get all my needs met. Emotional, physical, psychological, the list goes on, even spiritual. I'm not going to get that. So now I have to go in self-preservation mode. And I have to operate in this personality for this time in this place, but I also have this person over here to kind of help me live this normal life on the other side. So in some ways, over time, you can learn to become comfortable with operating within those two pieces of yourself. And we can call it the split self. You have person A, person B, and that keeps you really protected sometimes. The other piece of this is an idea and a concept that used to be considered shared psychosis. I may do a video and post it next week as well on this. Shared psychosis is the idea that it's no longer considered shared psychosis, by the way, but I'm just going to refer to that by that label for now. It is now a different label. Shared psychosis is basically this. It's I have, and it happens in relationships with two people. I have a person who is somebody that I have, emotionally connected with at a deep level. Okay, we're not talking about you're my friend. We're not talking about you're my teacher, you're my therapist. We're talking about you're my mom, you're my father, you're my husband, you're my wife. That kind of close relationship, okay? What happens in shared psychosis, previously known as shared psychosis? The primary person or the individual who the psychosis has originated begins to believe in things that's not true. Delusions, false beliefs that are very much cemented, very much ingrained in everyday life, thoughts and beliefs that are not true, but very, very strongly believed to be true. Like, my cable box is watching me, and it's because the FBI is after me. And the FBI is after me because I didn't pay my taxes on time. That could be a delusion. So a person who has that, or a person who has some kind of heightened sensory experience, excuse me, that's a hallucination, right? I'm hearing things that are not really being said, right? I'm hearing somebody call my name and tell me I need to go kill myself. I'm hearing this whispering in my ear all the time. I'm seeing over there in the corner a cow standing there looking at me, and he's looking really angry. Or I'm looking over there and I see a ghost of my cousin from 1982, even though I've never met her. Okay. There's a lot of hallucinations and delusions, and I'll get into this in a video at a later time. But a person who has these really fixed, unhealthy, cemented and ingrained unstable concepts and illnesses, they can then share them with you and impact you in such a way, especially if you are highly influenced, in a way that causes the both of you to appear psychotic. That's why it was formerly known as shared psychosis. One person that's a dominant person of that relationship, let's say your mother, narcissist, but also very delusional, shared her delusions with you for so many years. And all you've wanted, for example, is a mother that could love you. But the only love that you get is when you agree with her delusions. So then what does that mean? I'm going to agree with my mom's delusions, or I'm going to, on accident, kind of confirm her delusions. And we become so close and ingrained that now I'm starting to believe those same delusions. And I can't get my mind unwired from this because I'm so involved with this dominant person. And so we'll get into this more, because I know you guys are probably like, okay, I want to hear more on this. If you really do, let me know in the chat box. But there can be this kind of a thing going on, right? Formerly known as shared psychosis, currently known in the chapter on schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. That's the chapter that is currently in the DSM. Okay, so that can be that. We can also throw codependency in there, and we can also throw in traumatic bonding. That's something that you can also experience as well. There may also be a heightened susceptibility of deception in your life, a heightened susceptibility to deception. You haven't had the love and the parent that you needed. You haven't had the unconditional love and attention and affection that you needed from your mom, your father. So what happens? Well, you go look for that out into this very cold, deceptive, evil world. And so, okay, you open your front door, you look around, you say, you know what? I'm lonely. I think I'm going to go and see what Carol's doing over there. Carol talks to you. Carol tells you that she has a daughter that's lonely. You guys hook up, you go party together. Then you meet a guy there. And next thing you know, you guys are talking about marriage after only 2 dates. And, he's ready to move in with you and you're ready to move in with him. And then he springs on you that he's married, and now you got to figure out what's going on. And on top of him being married, he's also a criminal on the run, and you're just learning this for the first time. Why? Because you have been so emotionally desperate and psychologically needy for someone that your life experiences led you up to somebody who seemed okay, but now you realize, I've been very, very deceived. And so in a sense, it's like having a heightened sensitivity to deception. It's a heightened, I'm more likely, I'll put it that way, more likely to be deceived than maybe that one over there who had a very healthy attachment with their parents, have been taught to have proper boundaries, and has had love and affection for most of their life, right? That's a painful one. I have a lot of clients like that. There's parentification and adultification that can also happen, and parental alienation. Those are also three things that can happen. Parentification, you become the parent of one of your siblings, and it actually happens in a way that takes your childhood. Adultification, you become grown up too soon. And parental alienation, one parent is pitting you against another parent. That can also happen. There may also be absolutely no concept of normative caregiving, no concept of normative caregiving. You may not exactly know what that's like to have a parent that's loving, authentic, unconditional. When it comes to loving you as their child, you may not know what that feels like. So there may be absolutely no concept for you of normative caregiving and love. There may also be little to no ability to self-regulate. Research in psychology suggests that most children look to their parents to be almost like external regulators for them. Can you believe that? When a baby cries and they're just kind of crying, the cute little strained cry that they tend to have sometimes when they're really needy, and, they can't get their needs met without you. It's almost like that for adult children of emotionally detached parents. It's like you're crying and you're hoping somebody hears you, but mom and dad never hears you. Why? Because they don't have the capacity to hear you. So what that does to you over time, excuse me, is it makes it really hard for you in different areas of your life to self-regulate. Why? Because you never really had that external regulation system. You never had dad to come over and hug you and tell you it's going to be okay. You never had mom to come over and talk to you and say, you don't have to feel that way. You don't have to think that way. Let's do it this way. Let's go this road. Let's plan this instead, right? And so you may not have had those external emotional regulators, And so without that co-regulation, that's another word we use in psychology. Without that co-regulation, you don't learn how to self-regulate, Have you ever seen, or have you ever experienced, before we go to the chat box and I wrap up because I'm way over time, have you ever seen a child who has tons and tons and tons of family trauma, and they're in their bedroom listening to dad physically and emotionally abuse the mother in situations of domestic violence? I'm sure there have been, I believe, commercials and movies where dad is screaming and cursing mom out. You can hear dad slap mom. You can hear mom trying to fight back. You can hear mom screaming, calling the police. You can hear the neighbors kind of, scurrying and trying to figure out what's going on. And where's the child? Under their bed, okay, in fetal position, or over in the corner. One time I went to a house with the police in the crisis team that I was overseeing many, many, many years ago. And I remember opening the closet. There was a curtain to a closet. I opened the closet, and there's a little girl, a 5-year-old, and she's literally in this position, and she's rocking back and forth, and she's talking to herself. Why? Because she doesn't want to hear what dad is doing to mom. And so she did not have the ability to learn self-regulation because she didn't have anybody to help her do that. She did it the best way she could. And over time, she kind of became a negative self-regulator, if you will. She used drugs to numb her pain. She used dating various men to numb her pain. She started gambling. Like, the list just goes on, and it got worse for her. Without those parental or adult or guardian co-regulators, it can be really hard to digest how you need to regulate your own emotions. Lastly, these kind of parents leave a major, deep imprint of low self-esteem and of emotional turmoil in some families. I'm not going to say all, but sometimes with emotionally detached and immature parents, there's this deep imprint of emotional turmoil, low self-esteem. It's like a stain. It's really hard to move it, Okay, I'm going to pause here, guys, because we have a live chat tomorrow. I'm going to talk about reparenting yourself, and you're going to be able to look at kind of a little bit more of what we talked about tonight, but in a deeper way. I did tell you you I was going to talk about loneliness. Let me just briefly mention here to you that there are 7 types of loneliness. You can kind of see my scratching of the surface video. I'm going to post it in the description box for you. So you can go ahead and see it if you don't find it on my channel. But let me just say that there's a lot of loneliness that often comes into the space of an adult child who has had emotionally immature and detached parents. You can't have the internal experience of emotional fulfillment, of psychological fulfillment, of interpersonal connection when your parents don't allow you to experience that first. And so loneliness can kind of set in when you realize that ultimately you are alone. That's existential loneliness. It's, no matter which way I turn and I go, I'm still stuck with these questions of my existence, and nobody is there to help me figure them out. Really, I'm in this on my own. There's 7 types of loneliness. I'm not going to go over them. Go ahead and check my video out. But those types of loneliness can often be another result or consequence of having a parent like this. They really do create this big pool of chaos for most people. And it's only when you become an adult that you realize the damage is deep, right? All right, guys, this is rough of a conversation, right? Yeah. Okay, let me try to catch up here just a little bit. James McDonald says, my parents were often selfish to the core. I felt misunderstood, not heard, and like an inconvenience. Yeah, I said that earlier. I'm so glad you brought that up. You are an inconvenience. Anytime the parent has to be what they are supposed to be and they're not ready to be it, you are an inconvenience. 100%. You can definitely feel that, A parent that parents you with an iron fist, sometimes you can feel even at that they love you, Have you ever seen a parent snatch their kid and say, don't you ever walk away from me again, because you went across that street and you didn't look, and it's kind of like, mom loves me. She doesn't want me hurt, right? So that in a sense speaks volumes that you're my child, and I'm here to love you. If that speaks volumes, so too does the neglect. So too does the go talk to dad, So too does the I'm going on a date tonight. Food is in the microwave. Potato chips are over there in the cupboard. I don't really care if you have friends over tonight. Just make sure you don't have a party and trash my house. See you tomorrow. That speaks loudly too. I've seen parents like that, and it's painful. Nancy R says, you're hitting it right. You're hitting it for me tonight. That's awesome. Good to hear that. Hopefully tomorrow will be that healing part of the live chat. Bryn, I'm looking at my camera battery. I'm like, okay, I better stop talking. Bryn, is it Bryn McDonald? I always mess your name up. I'm so sorry. That's my fault. Bryn McDonald says, I was quite lazy. Welcome to the chat, by the way. She says, I was quite lazy growing up and often refused to do basic chores because I didn't feel like it. I'm stuck seeing myself as a bad child or wondering if I was in Free's response. I don't want to have an excuse. Well, I think you can look at your situation after all the examples I've tried to give tonight on what happens in these kind of households. Try to compare and say, is that me? Was that my experience? And that may validate that you're not exaggerating. And it's very possible you could have been depressed as well. I think a lot of kids misconstrue depression for laziness. So when they come to my office and they're like, yeah, I didn't take the trash out. I didn't do that assignment. I didn't study. I didn't study my driver's manual. I didn't take the trash out. I didn't make my bed today. And as they're going down this list, I'm sitting there and I'm just evaluating within myself, does this sound like the symptoms of depression? And sometimes it does. So you may want to consider that. Jeanette, hello and welcome. Good to see you in a live chat tonight. Hi, Don Juan. I thought I said hello. Maybe I didn't. I think I'm far up in the comments. Welcome. Always glad to see you. Okay, let me try to catch up. I'm going to have to skip a little bit. Jay Nash, thank you so much for that. You're so kind to me in the comments. You're welcome, and thank you. I was reading through and I saw some of your comments and I'm like, that's so awesome. Thank you. Kim Matthew says CPTSD sucks, but we can heal and get beyond survival mode. It's work though. Yeah, absolutely. I always tell my clients there may be bits and pieces to recovery mode and different levels to recovery mode. So level 1 may be different from level 2, Maybe I'll bring that up tomorrow. Janine McCartha, good to see you in a live chat. Your comments are always sweet to me as well. To be very honest, all of you have lovely, lovely comments. So always grateful to see that. Janine, good to have you tonight. Welcome. She says, thanks for helping me understand the negativity of toxic, immature parents. I feel safe now. Oh my, that's so humbling. Thank you for saying that. And so glad you feel that way. Abundant Life, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Degenerates, I see you addressing me directly, so that means I better read this. Degenerate says, what do you make of the knife epidemic in London and UK? Oh my God, don't get me started on that. I struggle with my job at times when we're unable to save kids from violence using the models we're expecting to work with. Ooh. Okay, that's one of those comments where I'm like, I'm going to have to come back into a whole live chat on that. I have a lot of friends in the UK, in London. I'm not going to get into that. I will answer that. If you can post that in the comments section, I'll give you an answer. And for those of you who are interested in my comment or response to that, if you post your comment, degenerates, I can attack it and address it there. It is really hard, right? Yeah. Good question, though. Good question. Jessica J., thank you so much for that sweetness and that kindness. Thank you. I will. And take care of yourself as well. You've been through quite a bit lately. And you always come in here and you're always so sweet. Shalom. Shalom. Yeah, I always love that. Thank you, Abundant Mason. Always glad to get comments from you as well. Okay. You go on to say, how late am I? Not as late as I was, that's for sure. Doberman Mama, hello and welcome. Good to see you. I know I'm far up in the comments, so you guys probably have questions for me, things that I haven't been able to get to. Forgive me for that. I'm going to go through this whole chat box tonight and look through some of this. David Tooley, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Always good to see you in a live chat. SH, I'm going to read a couple more, then we can wrap up, guys. SH says, yes, sometimes I'm scratching my head feel like I walked in at the end of a conversation that I'm not privy to, like I do something wrong. Did you complete that, SH? I don't see it. I'm going to just address that. Do you feel like this with your parents or with mom? SH, if that's the case, I never like that because it always feels like you're being undermined, right? You come into a room, you sense an energy, or you engage with somebody and you sense an energy. If you're highly intuitive, you sense an energy, and that energy could be giving or rejecting. You know what I mean? And so, yes, I get exactly that emotional experience. Fair Bug, I hope I'm seeing that correctly. Hello and welcome. So glad to see you and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. So what a valuable resource this is for everyone. Thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you for sharing your skills and gifts. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. I really appreciate that. Okay, Starburst. I cannot ignore you. Okay, that's my favorite screen name. I can't, it gives me joy when I see that Starburst symbol on here. Welcome, good to have you. I was glad to see you if I didn't welcome you. Okay, I am screening for comments. My aunt passed away. I'm going to let you know because I said I may or may not bring it up. My aunt passed away. My aunt, briefly, and then I'm going to get a few more comments and we will go. My aunt was basically a mother to my mother and my uncle. And she is the gateway to the indigenous Native American blood that flows through my veins, my mom, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. And I learned about her. I learned about my heritage through doing some background searches, census data pulls, looking at family photos that nobody else found or had or saw. And I was able to piece the pieces together. I also found legal documents, and she is the gateway to the other piece of my culture. And so, I feel myself getting emotional, so I don't want to continue talking about it because I still want to be strong for right now. But she is a very important piece of the puzzle, and my family and I, we just feel like that chapter has been closed, and that's loss, right? It's been cold lately. Good to see you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that. Thank you, Juby Joe. Thank you. Havana, hello. Good to see you. Always glad to see you in a live chat as well. Okay, looking for a handful more comments. Is it Rochella? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello, welcome to tonight's live chat. Thank you for mentioning that awesome book. Lindsay Gibson, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. She also has a self-help book for emotionally detached parents. It's for adult children. So go ahead and check that out. Lindsay Gibson is so wonderful. I saw her. We met each other at the psychotherapy, it's called the Psychotherapy Networker Conference last March. And I was able to meet her, and, we talked for a little bit. We're both a part of the same publishing company. So we talked a little bit, and she's like showing me her new book. And she's like, what book did you write for this company? And I'm like, oh, it's this one right here. And so we're talking, and we shared a couple of thoughts about parents like this, and it's so interesting with how personalized she is and so motivated she is by this topic, and it professionally and personally hits home. She's just wonderful. So, I will try to share some resources. Just meeting her and talking with her at the conference, I learned some new places that she's at, her website, things like that. So maybe I'll post that later on tonight in case you're interested. She's great, very humble, and I so appreciate that in other professionals, Okay, guys, Jeremy Robinson, hello, welcome, good to see you, says, sounds like my mom. She is like the my way or the highway parents. Yeah, I don't like that. No, my way or the highway parents could sometimes come across as very loving, protective parents, and that's totally fine with me. But if it's a narrow, overly structured, like stuffy, I'm not going to see things another way perspective, we have a problem because there's always room to grow. There's always room to transform. Degenerate says, wow, thank you, Tamara, for addressing my comment. You're welcome. I'm experiencing this with my 17-year-old right now. There you go. Diagnosed with ADHD at 14, but also has childhood trauma through my unmet needs. Yeah. My suggestion, and this is just my humble suggestion before we wrap up, degenerates, you might want to kind of, okay, he's diagnosed with ADHD. You may want to ask, is there any kind of trauma-informed therapy that maybe we can get him just to kind of, help him talk through some of the issues that may be traumatizing to him? I often recommend what we call trauma-focused CBT, and that's cognitive behavior therapy. And I like it because it's so structured. He may not need that structure of trauma therapy, but it's worth a try. I think it's worth asking. And if he has a therapist, you may want to just say, is there anything that he can do to kind of work through some of these things that could be traumatic? So, guys, I love you so much. I'm so glad I was able to come on here and see you and talk to you. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about reparenting yourself from this place of just feeling stuck and all alone. So come join me tomorrow. In the meantime, have a wonderful Friday. I hope you have a safe, good night, wherever you are. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.